like I said before, you can have a maximum of $500,000 with your request with each application. We're going to say this later on. You're not bound to submitting just one application. You cannot have a multi-site application, so you can't have one project that highlights 3 different elements that you want to renovate. But if you have 10 LWCF parks within your jurisdiction and you want to submit 10 LWCF applications, you can do that. Let's see. We're going to get into this in a little more depth later. There is some kind of jockeying that sometimes goes on within PARTF, to where one of the things that the Parks and Rec Trust Fund can do, the authority can look at the amount of funds requested, and they can consider that whenever they're selecting projects. That is not the case with LWCF whatsoever. Ask for the amount that you need. I would suggest that you don't overmatch it, and I'll show you why later. But kind of undermatching or overmatching your grant or underselling how much you actually need does not help you. Like I said, we'll get into that in more depth later. We said before, you can do land acquisition as part of your project. Properties that are acquired with LWCF assistance, I think most people that have been in Parks and Rec for a long time know that if you end up with LWCF at your park site, that is a park forever. The National Park Service is, and us equally, are quite stringent and strict about this. There's not wiggle room within it. So just before you go, if you're going to look at land acquisition projects, before you get into that, know what you're buying into. That if you're going to buy a 1/4 acre park with a lot of development around it, and that 1/4 acre park may not be there in 5 years, I would seriously consider whether or not LWCF is the grant that you want to go after. If you're going to buy property with LWCF funds, you need to plan on it being there forever. Let's see. And the way that the National Park Service kind of determines what that park is what's called a 6F boundary. I think a lot of people are familiar with it. There's kind of some shifting terminology that's going on within the National Park Service right now. So 6F right now is still the name for it. But basically what we're talking about is the park boundary. It's basically a red line that goes around your park that tells you that this park, anything contained herein within this red line is a park forever. Shaving any part of that away creates a compliance issue. And you'll see that kind of has broader implications. Sometimes you have a park within a park. So let me point to an example right now. If you have, so this is an example of an actual LWCF park. This is in North Carolina. So what you see there is in the red on the left-hand box is what the original LWCF site, that's the original 6F boundary. You can see kind of, this is an older park that over time, everything that is now green is the current day park, so it's kind of grown now. That red line dictates what the 6F boundary is. So LWCF regulations stipulate that anytime that you put additional funds into a park, that the boundary grows with it. So I want to repeat that. If you put funds into an existing LWCF park, even if it is a smaller boundary, by the time you're done with the project, the entire park becomes your 6F boundary. So whereas you have the small piece over here that is the current, we'll say it was built in 1970 and that is your 6F boundary, if you renovate a playground, let's say right where that little hand is, at the end of this project, that red line goes away and it goes around this entire park right here. Even if no money went into this section right here, your 6F boundary will expand to the new park boundary. That's something that we've gone back and forth with. Other states have too about the National Park Service, but that is their interpretation. So be very, very, very cognizant if you're going to put if you're going to request LWCF money to renovate items within your park. It's very advantageous if you want to protect land, if you want to protect your park. Then yes, the playground right here would be really beneficial if you want to protect this entire property. If you want some more ability to do other things within your park other than outdoor recreation, or if you want to have some type of some private-public partnerships that go on throughout here, You need to know that fully in advance before you start to request funding. So that is a crucial point. Just make sure that you don't overlook that. LWCF does not permit indoor recreation facilities to be developed on the site unless they enhance outdoor public recreation. So like we said before, you can't request funding for a gymnasium. If there is no existing indoor recreation on the site and you want to develop something, there is a process that you have to go through to do this. I think this is probably going to be the biggest issue that we have for noncompliance that comes up across the state. I think that there's going to be a large number of projects that were developed in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s at LWCF sites, and then they decided to put a senior center or a gymnasium on the site and did not alert the National Park Service in advance, and that puts you in noncompliance. So that's the first thing to check. You know where your park sites are, go check and see if there's an indoor facility. Now the catch to that is, if you told them in advance that you're going to put a park site in there and you got approval, then that can be a compatible use request and you would not be out of compliance. Or if, let's say that you got a 1980s grant for LWCF and that gymnasium was already there before you got the grant, it was a pre-existing condition and therefore you're not out of compliance. There's a lot of nuanced details, so it is things that you need to know about, and that's partly why our division is going to be doing the pre-award inspections. Don't assume that you're out of compliance without us at least taking a look at it. So don't go running scared that, oh no, we have a gymnasium on our LWCF site. You may have gone through that process correctly, and it may be permissible, or you may have a non-compliance issue that needs to be fixed. The National Park Service and our office have to turn away any incomplete application. And I will say there's a full checklist that our staff has to go through whenever we're reviewing each one of these applications to make sure that it is complete. Beyond that, completeness means not just something missing, but if you choose to try and submit something from a part of application that does not line up with this application, we may have to reject it as not being in line with the LWCF format that's requested. So we'll get into that in a little more depth, but just another note of warning: do not take your part of application and take a week and slap it over and submit it as your LWCF application. You may be wasting your time, and it may be rejected just before it ever gets to review. So all applications will be reviewed by our staff. I'd already said that. Earlier this year, we had submitted out for public comments, kind of the revisions to the local open project selection process that kind of outlines the hierarchy of how projects are selected. That's a public document. You can find that on our website. But we've also taken kind of the core of the open project selection process and put it into the application. Similar to how we kind of tell you with Tardif what it is that we're looking for and what we're going to evaluate the applications with, we do the same thing with LWCF. There's not going to be anything that we're trying to hide from you. You can look through the application and find out what it is that we're going to look for. All right, so the next thing up is planned road improvements. This comes into play probably more specifically if you're looking at a land acquisition grant. We strongly encourage you that if you're going to put together a land acquisition application and you know that there's going to be planned road expansions around the park or around the periphery of it, or if you're going to plan to put a gym there in the future, denote these things in your application right now. Pull your park boundaries away from those expanding roads. Put a note that there's going to be a planned indoor recreation facility here, even if it's going to be 20 years away, and increase your footprint. If you want that facility for that gym in the future on this LWCF site, don't put it down as 5,000 square feet if you think that it's going to be 5,000 square foot. Give yourself some buffer. Put it down as double that. That way you have some ability to grow. This is forever. So even if your community within the next 10 years only needs a 5,000 square foot facility, which is pretty small, 30, 40, 50 years from now, it may need way beyond that. The key points there are make sure that you're accounting for any proposed road development or future indoor recreation facilities.